Hello, Professor Ichino. Would you like to introduce yourself?
So good afternoon, everybody. So I'm a professor in economics. I'm 64-year-old, and I'm married with 4 children who are scattered in different places in the globe. And I received my training in economics at Bocconi University in Milan. And then I moved to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Boston, Cambridge, actually, where I took my PhD. And then I came back to Italy. That was a time in which still those who were studying abroad from Italy were coming back. Now this is happening less and less. But at the time I came back and I went back to Bocconi, where I taught for a while. And then I had the opportunity to come to Florence, also because my wife had a job offer here, to spend 1 year visiting the European University Institute in Fiesole on the hills surrounding Florence. And we liked it so much that we decided, together with the 4 children at the time, that we wanted to live here. And so we moved here. And we live here in the countryside around Florence. And I worked at the European University Institute for 8 years. The UI is a university in which professors can stay only for a short period of time. They cannot be tenured at the UI. And so at the end of the period, you have to go back to your own university. But Bocconi is a private university, so didn't keep my place. And so I had to look for a university that allowed me to live in Tuscany, but was close. And so I went to Bologna. I stayed there for 8 years. Then there was another job offer at the UI, so I came back to the UI. And next year, I will go back to Bologna because my second term at the UI is going to finish next year. So this is basically my professional history. I am also a person that likes very much sailing, rock climbing, skiing, biking. And Tuscany is fantastic because it offers the possibility to do all these things.
Wow. But what do you like the most about being a professor of economics?
Well, there are 2 things that I like in particular about this. The first one is to have the opportunity to help many young researchers to develop their ideas, to ask research questions, to learn how to do research. In this professional history that I described, one of the nice things is that both in Bologna and here, the UI is a university in which there are only PhD students. There are no undergraduates. And in Bologna, I was the director of the PhD program there for a while. So in my career, I advised about 80 PhD students, some of them very successful in their profession nowadays. So I consider this one fortune for me, because it is really nice to have had the possibility to work with so many young scholars at the beginning of their careers, with lots of ideas, research ideas. So this is one of the things that I like the most of my work. And the second one is that being a professor has the fantastic advantage of freedom. So nobody's telling me what I should research on. I choose what I want to research. I choose the question that I want to answer. Of course, I have to convince editors and referees of academic journals that what I write and what I do research on is interesting and valuable and deserves publication. And I have to convince the audience. But the fact that there aren't too many professions that allow someone that gives someone so much freedom, not only in terms of time and organization of the work, but also in terms of intellectual freedom. So these are the two things that I really like about my job.
And how do you get ideas for scientific research?
So first of all, as I always say to my students, maybe they should not follow the way I develop my career, because there are professors, there are researchers that build their career within a niche in the profession. So they are expert of topic X. And everybody knows that if you want to work on topic X, you have to read what these people do. There are a few other economists that instead prefer to jump around and ask different questions in different areas. And I'm more of this second type, which has advantages, it's more fun, and disadvantages, because it's much harder to build a sort of a brand name in a certain specific field. But basically, the reason why I am like this is that I read the newspaper in the morning, and very often I get ideas for things that I don't understand, and I want to see why they're like they are, why they're described like they are. And also the other way I typically get ideas for research is by listening to presentations of other professors, of other researchers, seminars, workshop, conferences. And by listening to what the other are doing, you get ideas for future research. I would say that about half of my projects come from newspaper in the morning, and the other half come from listening to what the other other researchers in the profession do.
But as you said, you live in this extraordinary landscape in the beauty of Italy. How does Italy influence your work?
Well, Italy is, I think, one of the places where that offers the best quality of life, and in particular, Tuscany is really blessed in many ways. For someone like me who likes physical activity, like sports, like mountaineering, like sailing, like biking, this is really a paradise. And you can think that then it is a distraction. How can you work when you can do all these things? It is a little bit of a distraction, I have to say. But on balance, I think it also helps to concentrate. So I can enjoy the things that I can do here, but it also helps me to relax and then be more concentrated when I have to work. I have to say, I would be extremely depressed in a rainy city of Northern Europe. And this is why I, differently than many other economies who move a lot, they get offers here and there, they change cities, continents. I didn't move much. I like where I am, and this is where I am happy. I don't know, maybe we don't have the counterfactual. So for sure, if I had remained in the United States, like most Italian students who go there for a PhD, now they go on the job market there and they remain there. My career would have probably been more productive. Probably I would not have had 4 children. Difficult to go up for tenure with 4 children. But I don't know. On balance, I think that the nice things that Italy can offer help. Having said that, Italy is not an easy place where to live because it is poorly administrated. There is a lot of bureaucracy. There is, not everywhere, but there are unfortunately locally places where rules are optionals. And so these things make living in Italy a little bit more difficult than living in other places. But it's also a country where there is a lot of work to do in order to possibly improve things. And so it's fascinating to be here.
Surprisingly, I must say, in your CV, you write about your personal life. This is not very usual. So let's ask, how do you balance work and family? Usually, this is a question that is posed only to women. So, but as you mentioned it,
it's a perfectly legitimate question. I don't know if it is surprising that I don't know if other people speak. For me, it was natural to talk about my family because my family is actually a fantastic family. I'm very happy about the union with my wife and about my 4 children. Certainly, so if you look at my CV in the early 90s, the number of publications I have and the quality of those publications was really very low. It is the time in which we had 3 children very close one to the other, 89, 90, and 92, the first 3, and then in 97, the 4th one. And certainly in that period, it was not easy at all to balance work and family life, or at least I dedicated a lot of time to the family. And in general, me and my wife, who both work, spent a lot of time with our children on weekends and in the evenings. For example, I never understand why in other countries, people send the kids to bed at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. How can they spend time with them if not in the evening? I mean, for example, dinner time for us was fundamental. It was the moment in which we were all talking. So sending the kids to bed and then eat, just me and my wife, is inconceivable for us. But I know that many people do that, and I don't know why they do that. So yes, I spent a lot of time with my family, and this probably has subtracted some time to my research. And then the kids became old and had their own life, and I have now more time to do research. And in fact, if you look at my profile, I think I'm publishing much more and much better now than when I was young, which is a little bit peculiar. Usually people do the opposite. But yeah, in my life, conciliation between family and work went this way.
Okay. And now let's talk about your idea that I like so much. So we start with the fact that women are still paid less than men for the same qualification and position. Can you tell us about the so-called gender pay gap?
Yes, this is in fact among the many topics on which I've worked in my life, one that has attracted my interest for many years. And at the cost of some simplification, I would say that there are 2 ways to think, 2 major ways to think about the gender gap. One is that the gender gap originates in the labor market within firms. That it is the way the work is organized, it is the taste of the employers that determines the fact that women are paid less. Employer think, rightly or wrong, that women are less productive, or customers think that male are better at doing certain job than females. And so the origin of the problem is in the firm, and it is in the firm that we should take actions. A second approach to the gender gap is that instead the origin of the problem is in the family, not in the firm. Exaggerating a little bit, the second way to think about the gender gap assumes that entrepreneurs, employers, maximize profits, they don't care if the worker is male or female. They just care about productivity, and they're happy to pay as much as is needed to get productive worker, and are blind with respect to gender. But since at home duties are divided unequally between men and women, it turns out that, in fact, women are less productive exposed when they work in a firm, even if ex ante are equally productive as men. And the reason is that in a country like Italy, where the culture is such that the division at home is such that women take up most of home duties, for example, when a kid is sick and the two partners in the morning wake up and the kids are sick, and a discussion that many people with parents had is, who stays home today? Who calls the doctor? Who goes to the pharmacy to buy the drugs? And the discussion is, oh, the man has a career, the man has an important meeting. From this important meeting depends future career, wages, promotion. The woman doesn't have such an important meeting, or is less important meeting. The career is already a different one. Even if the two maybe studied together in the same university, they graduated in the same course, soon after they start working, they take different type of careers. And in the end, the person who stays home is the woman. Since employers expect this to happen, even if we have an egalitarian couple, a couple that they really would like to divide jobs equally, so to toss a coin and decide randomly who stays home when the kid is sick, when the washing machine breaks, they just cannot do it, because even if they would like to be egalitarian, the market expects women to take more home duties, and therefore women are on average paid less. And even in an egalitarian family, it would be convenient for the partners, in order to maximize family income, that the woman stays at home more than the man. So it becomes a self-fulfilling expectation. So, in fact, another aspect that characterizes my way, perhaps peculiar, of thinking about the gender gap, and is an important development in the most recent year of my work on this topic, recent period, is that I think that there is more heterogeneity within gender than between gender. If you think about how feminism has developed, and in general, the debate on gender policy develops, the idea is that all men think in one way, all female thinks in another way, all females are homogeneous, they have the same opinion, all male have their same opinion, we differ from females. Now, Marianne Bertrand, who is a very famous and very smart economist, once gave a lecture at the meetings of the American Economic Association, in which they made the point that there is, and gave evidence that there is more heterogeneity within gender than between gender. So to make it a little bit extreme, there are two types of females and two types of male, egalitarian and traditional. And there is also assortative mating typically. And so again, at the cost of some simplification, economists like to simplify the word so that to understand it better. Let's say that as egalitarian men marry egalitarian women, and traditional men marry traditional females. And then employer, when they want to hire a woman, they say, well, are you egalitarian? Are you traditional? I don't know. So I have to guess. I have some expectations that there is a fraction, say, of, I don't know, 30% egalitarian, 70% traditional in Italy, maybe in Sweden is 80% egalitarian, 20% traditional, but still there are some tradition. And so the presence of traditional women is generating a negative externality on egalitarian women. Egalitarian women would like to have a career, but because employers think that they might stay home if the kid is sick, they will not trust their willingness to have a career. And vice versa, egalitarian are in some sense generating a negative externality on traditional women who would like to stay home, but they have to work a little bit more because of the presence in the market of the egalitarian one. Similarly for men. Now, if you take this view, the problem is that in this society, it is very difficult to signal your type. If employers knew that me and my wife are egalitarian, they would pay me and my wife exactly the same because they know that we're equally productive if we do the same job. But since they don't know, this is generating the gender gap. And therefore, we should think about gender policies more in terms of policies that allow couples to signal their type, more than as policies that is imposed to all women something and to all men something. So this is something on which I'm working now, and I understand that is a little bit unconventional. But again, the main point, coming back to your initial question, is what do I think about the gender gap? The gender gap, in my opinion, starts at home. And then it is reflected in a gender pay gap in the market, but it is at home that we have to intervene, not in the companies.
Yeah, for example, with some kindergarten more, this would also help a lot. I mean, everywhere. It's everyone is complaining that there is no childcare. I mean,
these ideas I developed together with Alberto Alesina, and we often wrote that kindergartens are the aspirin that you give to cure the symptom, but does not cure the cause of the illness. We can build a kindergarten at the corner of every street. But the question is, who is going at 4:30 or 5 to pick up the kid? The woman or the man? If it is the woman that goes to take the kid to school and to pick it up at 5:30 or 4 or whatever in the middle of the afternoon, only men will stay at work in important meeting until 8 o'clock. Women will not be able to do overtime, to stay in important meeting. They will have to go home at 4 o'clock. And so if you look at it in this way, you understand that kindergarten do not help. In fact, people, I mean, it is relatively unknown, but Sweden, which is perceived as one of the most egalitarian countries in terms of gender, is a country to which it is true that there is the gender pay gap is relatively small within jobs. But women are heavily segregated in very particular occupation, the one that allows flexibility in terms of home duties. So our opinion with Alberto was that kindergarten are not a solution. In fact, there are countries like the UK or the US in which many women work, many more than in Italy, many more than in Italy. And childcare are extremely expensive. There is no public childcare at all. So this idea that kindergarten magically solved the gender gap is, in our opinion, ridiculous. It's falsified by this data. And this is true also, for example, Bologna is one of the cities with the best childcare system in Italy. And the labor force participation of women, differently than in any other in the rest of Italy, is extremely high. close to Scandinavian standards. If you look at the pay gap in Bologna, it's still there. Because what counts is who pick up the kid at 5:30.
So now it's really crucial to understand the suggestion you had as your idea, together with Professor Lesina, was to suggest tax relief only for women. Why? Is it this
is actually closely related. This proposal is closely related to this characterization of the gender gap that I tried to give. So if you agree with me, at least for a moment, that the problem of the gender gap is in the family, is in how duties are divided at home, and therefore that it is on that intervention should change that division at home. And then if you are able to change the culture, the division at home, then magically things will go well in the market. So if you agree on these premises, then then our proposal, we think, is the most effective way and least costly way to achieve exactly this objective. So the proposal consists exactly in the following. In this moment, there are countries in which, for example, there is joint taxation. I don't know about Germany.
Yeah, Ehegattensplitting. Yeah, so in Germany.
It's joint taxation.
Yeah, so and the man.
When there is joint taxation, and we live in a world in which males are paid more than women, and there is progressivity. By doing a joint taxation, you are raising the tax rate of female with respect to what would be their tax rate if they had independent taxation, and lowering the tax of male. Okay? So already now we are in a world in which women are essentially taxed more than men because of this joint taxation. So a first step is to eliminate joint taxation, but we go one step further and we say, why, even in a world like Italy, in a country like Italy, where there is already separate taxation, so the tax schedule, the progression of tax rates is the same for men and women, let's now propose that women are taxed less and men are taxed more. So to make it simple, let's suppose for one moment that tax rate is proportional. So the tax is 30%, okay, tax rate. In this moment, women and men pay 30% in taxes. Our proposal to say, let's reduce the tax rate for female, for example, to 25%, and increase to 35% the one of male. Let's think about what would happen. What would happen is that if you go back to the situation I was describing before, the couple that in the morning discovers at breakfast that one kid is sick, who stays home now? Well, now, given the reduction of the tax rate of the woman, it is not so evident that it's a good idea if the woman stay home, because after tax, the income of the woman is larger than the income of, maybe at least equal or larger than the income of the man. It depends on how you play with the tax rates, right? So the idea is that by lowering the tax on women and raising the tax on men, first of all, you can do it in a way that is balanced for the public budget. So it's no cost for the government. And this one major thing, building daycare facilities is costly. Our proposal is not costly. And second, you induce within the couple a different bargaining power. You increase the bargaining power of women when they have to bargain at home on who does what. Third, it has also the advantage that once things will start to change, an employer will understand who are the women who are egalitarian and the men who are happy to have equal division at home, then you can reduce the gap and go back to a single taxation. So tax rates can be changed very easily. So it is a very modular and flexible policy that you can adjust from year to year as long as the gender gap in line with how the gender gap evolved. So we believe that this if we really want to be serious about reducing the gender gap, this is the way to do it. It would be extremely effective, would change the way people think, would really change the bargaining power and induce more women to work. And of course, there would be also bargaining between firms and workers, and there would be some kind of compensation between how much the tax relief will go in the pocket of the woman and how much it will go in the pocket of the firm in order to convince the firm to hire more women. But it would have an effect both on the intensive margin, so working more for women who already work, but also on the extensive margin, how many women would start to work because of this. Now, this proposal has also another major advantage that has nothing to do with gender issues, but is well known to economists. Economists, a very famous economist of the early 20s of the last century, Ramsey, studied what is now called as the Ramsey principle of optimal taxation, that says something that is actually very obvious. If the state wants to maximize tax revenues, there is no point in taxing goods that have a very elastic demand or very elastic supply. Because the moment you tax that good, nobody will buy that good, and so the tax revenue will be zero. It is much more convenient for the government to tax goods that have a supply or a demand that is very rigid. In this moment, if you compare the labor supply of men and the labor supply of women, which one is more rigid? In a society like Italy, and I bet also in Germany, women work nevertheless because they have to work. And so even if you tax them more, they will continue to work, at least initially. So they have a rigid supply. We know from the data from every study in the world who have estimated the elasticity of labor supply of women that is very high. If you reduce the wage of a woman, the woman will stop working or will work much less because the woman has a lot of work to do at home. And if it is not convenient to work in the market because the wage is low, then I work at home. So it's a very elastic supply. The supply of work of women react a lot to the wage. The supply of men does not react to the wage. So because of the Ramsey principle, it makes total sense, even if you didn't have any gender objective. So just because of optimal taxation, it would make sense to tax men more and women less. So this is another very important reason why we think that our proposal is a very reasonable one. Of course, this is a proposal that has been criticized in many ways, but we never could find a very convincing argument. For example, there are people who say it is non-constitutional. Taxes should be the same for all men and women. But even if in many constitutions there is a principle that could be read in that way, this principle is already violated in many ways. For example, we allow wage earners with more children to have more deductions. I have 4 children. My colleague who has 0 children, we are paid the same. I pay fewer taxes than him, simply because I am allowed to have deductions because of the children. And there are many other ways in which we differentiate tax across space. There are regions in Italy that have lower taxes than other regions. So if we really think that taxes should be the same for everybody who earn the same, then why we allow those differences and not difference based on gender? For example, there are countries in the world in which it is well understood that women have fewer car accidents than men because they drive more safely. They're better drivers, despite what people think. And they have very much, they pay lower insurance rates.
Yes, in Germany it's also like that.
Okay, is this discrimination? No, it's the recognition that there is a difference and that there is no reason. Actually, it would be discriminatory to force women to pay the same insurance rate than men. And that's actually, this example is very important because it says that if we have exactly for the same reason why we want to differentiate insurance premia between men and women, for exactly a similar reason, we want to differentiate taxes by keeping taxes the same. In fact, that is unjust. By allowing the difference, we would generate more justice. In fact, the Italian Constitution says that there should be no discrimination according to race, religion, gender, and so on. But the second comma of that article of the Italian Constitution says the Republic has to do whatever is necessary so that in reality, this principle is obtained. And gender-based taxation, in our opinion, does exactly that. It seems as a discrimination, but in fact, it is a discrimination that brings back equality. And the principle of affirmative action in the Anglo-Saxon culture is exactly this. Affirmative action is a differentiation to bring back equality. I have already explained that why we think it is more effective than building daycare facilities. It is also extremely transparent. We think that men have an advantage, we tax it away. This is standard. Taxation is a way by which society generates more equality. Taxes and subsidies are a way in which we generate equality where there is none. So it is totally natural that a society that really believes that there is a gender pay gap, that there is a problem of equality between gender, if we really believe it, the most natural way to adjust this disequilibrium is through taxes, because we do it for poverty. We do it for disequilibrium between regions. We do it for many other types of inequality. Why shouldn't we do it also for gender? So we came to the conclusion with Alberto that since nobody has ever been willing to listen to us, nobody has taken seriously this proposal, the fact is that nobody really wants gender equality. That's the reason why they don't want it. They prefer to use measures that are ineffective. Incidentally, quotas. Think about what a quota system is. Quota system says that if you and me are identical, but there is a quota such that the firm should hire a woman, not a man, you are hired and I stay home. This is like a tax rate of 100%. So you can interpret quotas as a gender-based taxation with a tax rate difference of 100%, which is extremely rigid, an exaggeration, and in fact, it is not applied almost anywhere because it is unfeasible. So what we really cannot understand is why feminist movement propose quotas and reject gender-based taxation. Because quotas are an extreme form of gender-based taxation, gender quotas. So if you accept quotas, a fortiori you should accept gender-based taxation because it's just a more flexible way to do the same thing. So if you don't want to do it and you prefer this extreme form of gender-based taxation because you know it's going to be ineffective, I know, so you really don't want what you claim you want. That's our interpretation. I hope I have been clear.
Yeah. It is very clear. So it is very clear that there is a political will to not create the conditions for gender equity. So
that's our interpretation, because this this way to deal with it. For example, why don't we do an experiment? A lot of my research in a different area is about causality in econometrics and the importance of running experiments to evaluate policy. A mystery to me is why, to introduce any medical therapy, we run experiments. Why, for social therapies, societies are so reluctant to run experiments. I was hoping that one of the good legacies of COVID was the fact that people, I think, finally understood why we want to run randomized experiments. We want to compare equal group of people treated with the vaccine, people treated without the vaccine. And if there are differences, then since the two groups were identical, it can only be the vaccine. So why don't we do the same here? We are not sure that gender-based taxation works. Let's try it. Let's run an experiment and see if it works.
yeah, it's the same with innovation, and they say all reports and studies says that when there are women, everything is going better, the performance or this and that, but still this potential is being wasted. So there must be a political will not to go on with this. Yeah,
political will, and also, political will, but also what I don't understand is that even among women, we didn't encounter, except for you, interest in this proposal. We were interviewed by some newspapers. We wrote articles here and there, but no government really took us seriously. And even feminist movement criticized us very explicitly. I would be really curious to have a debate in Germany on this. In Italy, there was a lot of opposition.
But I think now that the workforce is really missing, so young people, like in the 70s, can really choose where to work because because of the situation nowadays, can be that this incentive could be useful. I hope.
This is possible. I think it is something that would work at all levels of the labor market. So actually, to be fair, one of the major problems that are typically cited when we talk about gender gap is the glass ceilings, no? So the idea that at the top of the hierarchies, women cannot progress. And if you think about it, if you use gender-based taxation, you can act exactly on those type of promotion at the top of the hierarchies. So it is true that it is a problem for young people searching for their first job and so on. But I think it would be particularly effective to allow women to break the glass ceilings. This possibility to, particularly with assortative mating, often we see couples in which both they are managers, both they have careers, both are professors, but somehow there is a moment in which, because of some mechanism, the career of the man is different than the career of the woman. We know There is this literature in economics on the child penalty. Big turning point is the birth of the first child. But again, if men and women were taxed differently, we think that the child penalty, this drop in the earnings and in the employment probability of the women after the first child that lasts for a long time, that would change, we think, with gender-based taxation.
But nowadays there is also this phenomenon that young people are not getting married, are not getting children. So how does this would work for people without thinking of a family?
Okay, good point. So first of all, our proposal affects all women, not married women. So we propose that every woman should be taxed less, at least in the transition, until the transition to a different equilibrium has taken place. And the reason is that this is another principle that economists have, that you should not tax good that can change their nature to avoid taxation. So for example, if you tax only married couple, then people do not marry in order not to be taxed, no? So while of course you can change sex, but it's still relatively rare. So saying that you do gender-based taxation is something that should not induce those type of reactions. So the proposal is to tax all women less and all men more if you really want to generate this type of reaction. As you perhaps remember from a previous answer to one of your questions, I also mentioned this later development of my thinking on these ideas that says that there is more diversity within gender than between gender. So you may say, but why do you propose to tax all women less if you think that women are diverse, they are egalitarian, traditional, and so on and so forth? So in fact, one of the recent paper on which I'm working, and it's not ready yet, but I hope it will be ready next year, is actually saying that gender-based taxation should not be imposed, but should be offered to family in the same way, and to people, men and women, in the same way we currently offer joint or separate taxation. And you understand clearly that if you allow a couple to choose different or equal tax rates, egalitarian couple will choose to have the woman tax less and the man tax more. Traditional will not. A traditional couple will not want the woman to be taxed less. And if anything, wants the man to be taxed less, because the man can then work more in the market and the woman is even incentivized to stay more at home. So magically, the offer of gender-based taxation or a gender-based taxation regime or a standard regime will differentiate couples. And so that idea that I mentioned before, that maybe we should have gender policy that induce this signaling, this is what we call it as economists. So this kind of signal that is credible could be a way to achieve this point. So that's why now our most recent version of the proposal is not to impose it, but to offer gender-based taxation to those who want to take it. Of course, for given total budget revenue.
Thank you very much for these insights. Now just 2 more questions. What would you recommend to people who want to study economics?
Well, first of all, I would say that it's a very nice area of research. Economics is called the dismal science. because it's considered a science that is very sad. It's always looking at cost and benefits, no passion, no ideals. But it's actually not true. Economics is the science that has the mission to remind the world that there is no free lunch, that the problem is how to allocate scarce resources between different goals. That if we like A and we choose A, we will give up B. There is no way we can have both A and B. This is what we call opportunity cost. And if you look around you, you will see that most of the political debate, most of the debate in any context, even within the family, is a debate that forgets completely budget constraints. People think that they can do whatever they want. And I think it is fascinating instead to study how to help people make decisions that are conscious of the budget constraint and suggest how to better allocate resources. Particularly now that we are facing a climate crisis. And it is crucial to understand how to deal with this crisis in a way that, for example, doesn't punish developing countries. It's very easy for us that we developed for 200 years to say, oh, sorry, we polluted the planet. Now, new Indians, new Chinese, you should stop growing and should remain poor because otherwise the climate. So that is an example of a fascinating problem in which the resources are scarce. We need to make this planet survive, and we need to do something, but at the same time, the blanket is short. We cannot ask them to suffer because we did the mistake before. So economics is fascinating. It is the science of constraints, but it is fascinating because it solves fundamental problems of the humankind. And so I would tell these people that they are doing a choice that is very challenging, very demanding, but fascinating.
Okay. So if possible, what superpower would you like to have?
Oh, no superpower.
No superpower.
If anything, I would like to go faster when I bike.
Yeah,
that is really something I would like to do.
Yeah.
I'm no longer able to stay behind my children. So that's, yeah, if I want one, I would like to be able to continue to bike as I was biking when I was young.
This is for our younger audience. Okay. So thank you very much for your insights and your work.
Thank you for your attention. I hope I was clear.
Yes.